Welcome back to Am I Rich Yet? A podcast where we help millennials and Gen Zs spend, save, and grow their money smarter. Welcome to episode 21, where we are going to be talking about lifestyle versus finances. Why don't you sum that up? What is that?
By the way, I'm Rob, George's dad, recently retired financial advisor, and I'm here to help you make smart decisions with your money.
And I'm Georgia, Gen Z MBA student and navigating my personal finances.
So I feel like this is the headline for the entire podcast series. I think your generation has really struggled not so much with the lifestyle, but with the financial side and the lifestyle together. And so I think this is an important podcast, an important discussion to have, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Why don't we start off with our questions of the day?
So mine's going to be interesting, Georgia. What's the one thing you like least about your father?
Oh my God, that's a crazy question. I think I'll say something that probably 90% of children with fathers your age would say. And I would say, like, a bit of stubbornness. And you have your opinion, and sometimes that's the opinion. And you guys in your generation are tough to mold and to change your opinion. So a bit of stubbornness, that's what I'll
I
say.
think I've come a long way.
I would actually say that with practice, with molding, you've shown some resilience in that.
Okay, fair enough. Question for me.
What's your most favorite thing about me? No, I'm kidding. Give me your least favorite thing about me.
You're a lot like me. You can be very stubborn.
Oh,
And your mood can rule the house.
okay.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay, so we're going to be covering lifestyle versus finances. We had a lot of questions come in on this topic. Like you said, it's essentially the headline to our entire podcast series. And so we're going to jump into questions from our listeners and viewers. But before we do that, what are some things we should be thinking of?
Okay. Being a financial advisor for over 30 years is a unique privilege in that you think a lot about money. And you think a lot about money in couples. And so I'm going to say this to start off. If your friends are spending more money than you on things, there's one of two things happening. If something appears too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So I'd often see, I know someone else is a financial advisor, I know what their income, maybe their spouse doesn't work, and I'd look at the money they're spending and I'm going, they're either going into debt to spend all that money or they're getting help. It's one of the two things.
Or they have investment properties.
Once you have, you kind of know that stuff. And typically investment properties, you had to buy them in the first place, so where did that money come from? So you either got help or you're going into debt. And I think the same holds true for your generation. If you think some of your friends are just seem to be spending freely, they're getting help, they're not having to pay their rent or whatever it is, or they're going into debt. And neither of those, I think, are a good thing. I mean, help sounds great, but I don't think it's good for you. That's my take. That's my personal opinion, but I don't think it's good for you.
Yeah.
So that's just to get us started. We got a couple of questions.
First question, how can we navigate expenses tied to things like wedding, destination, bachelorette parties, etc. when they're a good friend, but maybe this type of travel is out of budget?
First thing is know your budget before you commit to things. Know what you can spend, whatever it is. You're going to a wedding, know what you can put towards it. And when there's a wedding, there's all kinds of things, getting the dress and who's paying. Can you afford it? So I think the key there is just be honest with yourself financially. Don't overcommit.
Yeah.
It's expensive, especially destination weddings. I know your generation loved them. They're really expensive. Can you pull it off?
Yeah.
And because you don't want to go into debt going to a wedding. That's a horrible thing. That's not a good way to spend your money.
We talked about this in previous episodes. True, real friendships, you should be able to say the words, I can't afford that. And sure, there might be disappointment and stuff, but you should respect your friend for being honest with you. And, you're going to have friends with different income brackets, most people, for the rest of your life. And you need to understand that's not a you thing, that's a them thing. And we all have to live within our means.
Even things like a wedding gift. Weddings we've been to, I can't count how many weddings we've been to. We knew exactly what we were buying, and we had a budget that didn't change much. It went up with inflation and so on, but that's what we're spending on it as a wedding gift.
Yeah.
There were some exceptions. For the most part, it made life so much easier. We knew exactly what we were getting, as opposed to, what should we get for their wedding? And it was like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
who needs that discussion?
And if you're ranking your friendships by who's giving the biggest or who's making the biggest sacrifice, then your priorities are out of whack and you should probably
We wanted to give them something that would last. That's what we did.
Great.
Okay.
Next question. What is your opinion on spending money to make money? I feel I'm a spender and justify a lot of my spending with, oh, this will help me make more money. On the whole, I do feel as though my spending does often help me make more. Now, for listeners, I think what this person is getting at is things like investing in a Equinox gym membership that will suddenly put them in close proximity to other seemingly financially well-off people. Or, maybe a more practical example would be joining a golf club where your networking opportunities are expanded and you're the product of the average 5 people you spend the most time with. There's that quote. So what is your take on that?
I think spending money on things like wardrobe to look the part are really important, especially before you've learned anything, at least to look the part. I think that's really important, especially, even young financial advisors. I say you got to step up the dress code there. It's just not acceptable. You look like you're financially struggling. That's not how to be a good advisor. And even yourself, when you went into your career, you got to dress the part. And you always have, and didn't have to worry about that with you. But some people, you need to tell them, you got to spend some money on your wardrobe. Okay, so that's important. I think spending money on educational conferences and all that, when you start getting into the car I drive, I don't know, I think that's in your head. That's more, I want that car. And you're trying to justify the purchase. So, and I was never one to promote my services at country clubs or events. It just wasn't who I was. Actually, friends and family don't make great clients historically. And so, but I don't know, I think you're pushing it when you're saying I'm going to join a country club to justify the cost of it so I can schmooze and bring in people and get with the right people.
No, it's
Those people can spot you from a mile away and they don't want to do anything.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think for this writer, if you're following those kind of simple principles that we laid out in earlier episodes, make sure you're saving minimum 15% and, paying who you have to pay and paying yourself first, then if you're choosing to spend that additional income on a golf club membership or on expensive clothing or on whatever, then by all means do it if you're paying yourself first.
I'm going to go back to one, spending money on things like conferences. It was interesting. And sometimes I prefer going to a conference that was out of town. So yeah, that's a bigger expense. What was interesting is when I'd go and sit near the front. All the top advisors that I knew across Canada were always there at the front. And all the people who weren't that successful financially and didn't grow their practice said it was too expensive to go. It's an investment. It's not an expense. It's an investment in the future. And I think that's important.
That's important.
Okay? And so don't be afraid to invest in the future you.
But know your why. Do you want to just go on a trip to San Diego?
Well, exactly, right? And you're going to
lunches
skip
for
the
3 days
conference?
in a row?
No.
Yeah.
And if you do that on your first conference, then no, you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
Okay?
And if you're there, if you're putting yourself in that environment, get your money's worth. Network, invest. Give yourself
Absolutely.
the goal. I'm going to leave this
Good
conference.
ideas,
10.
whatever.
Yeah.
5 of which you'll implement, 2 will be good. Okay.
Next
up.
question. What's your advice on finding a balance between living in the moment / for the experience and saving for the future?
Couple things. It shouldn't be live now and save later. It should be live now and save smarter. Pay yourself first. We've talked about this time and time again. Set up your monthly plan. That first 45 years of your life, if you're going to make it to 90, the first 45 are what sets up the next 45 so you don't have to work as hard. If you keep pushing off that setup, you're going to be working your butt off for the last 45 years or not having much in retirement. Living fully and not saving, they shouldn't be enemies. They should work together. If you're doing the saving, you can enjoy your living. I've had a great life. I've been able to do a ton of things, but I always did my savings. You can do both. They're not enemies. I think a lot of your generation think they're enemies. They're not. Okay?
It's doable.
It's doable, for sure. These are some things that I thought of.
Okay, so
I've said a lot of things about your generation struggling, but you actually do have some excuses.
talk to us about it.
Okay? The cost of living in the last 10 years has outpaced your income. So it's more expensive to live than it used to be. There's no doubt. You're carrying a fair bit of debt. That makes it even more expensive, especially the millennials. So that's not an excuse, but because the cost of living was outpacing, you couldn't keep up. And so you fell behind, you've taken on some debt. You've got a bump in the road that you got to overcome. Spending on fashion, travel, eating out, you're trying to keep up. All of those things are not about enjoyment. A lot of it's about trying to keep up. So-and-so, oh, they went to a new restaurant, let's go. You don't always have to keep up. And I'm going to touch on that later. But I think the last thing is no one ever teaches you this stuff. Maybe, hopefully your parents taught you some of it, but they certainly don't teach it in school. Or if they did, you probably didn't pay attention to it. It didn't seem a bit. When you're in school, you think you're going to be the president within the first 5 years or prime minister of the country. It doesn't typically work that way. Things are different. We've been through some rough goes. 2008 was difficult. The COVID was difficult. They've all created a tremendous amount of economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
Changes in technology have created changes in careers and so on. Who knows what the careers of the future with AI coming in. So that's made it even more difficult. You've got to be creative. Getting access to credit cards. Push a couple buttons and you got a credit card. It's too easy. Now you can buy things and pay for it later. That's a horrible idea. Because you're overspending because you can't afford it, so you're going to pay for it later. Now, if you could afford it, you buy it now, pay for it later, and you put the money in the bank and invest it, that's different. But that's not what's happening. Most people are buying now and paying for it later, which just adds to the payment.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody has cash anymore. And before, you used to be able to say, I got $100 in my pocket, that's all I can spend. Now you've got unlimited access on your credit cards or your debit cards, and you've got overdraft protection and all that stuff.
And Apple Pay.
Apple Pay, and I can pay with my watch, I can pay with my phone. It's too easy. E-transfers, all that stuff is just, it's too easy to spend money.
Yeah.
So those are your...
Okay, so Gen Zs, millennials, you can feel a bit validated, or I hope you feel a bit validated after hearing some of these excuses, but something we've touched on as well is take ownership.
Yep.
For yourself. There are things that are out of your control, and if you're spending your life complaining and making excuses about the things that are out of your control, you're going to live a pretty miserable life.
I'm going to go through one last thing. So I remember this quote, and it was talking about retail, but a lot of things in life. You can't get quality, service, and price all together. Something's got to give. The quality has to give. The service won't be great, or the price. It's kind of the same with your generation. You want all kinds of stuff, and you want great experiences, and you want to save. Something's got to give. If you want great experiences and saving, then you got to give up the stuff. If you want a lot of stuff and saving, you got to give up the experiences. If you give up the savings, and you just focus on stuff and experiences, you will have no financial future. So that's my take. You can only get 2 out of 3. You can't get 3 out of 3. Just doesn't exist. What would your takeaway, Georgia, be from this one?
My main takeaway would be that if you're putting your savings first and paying yourself first, then you're still able to enjoy the experiences and you can still live life. But another big thing is, level set your expectations as to what those experiences are. You're not going to be driving the fastest car, having the nicest clothes, setting your future self up for success, and only having to work 5 hours a day. It's not realistic. So level set those expectations. Understand your priorities and what matters to you to live a fulfilling life, and then pay yourself first, and then live it up.
Question for you. We've had a lot of podcasts Have you changed your thoughts on savings and experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been one of the things you said that really stuck with me was that, like, what's that quote about the person with the biggest hat has no cattle?
Right. Big hat, no cattle.
It's a great quote that just kind of reinforces this idea that, like, especially with social media and stuff these days, you think everybody has access to everything and has more than you and lives a better life than you, but
They got no cattle.
they got no cattle, and maybe they have some cattle, but life just isn't like that. And you really need to understand your purpose, what's important to you, what you find value in, and advocate for yourself. If you don't want to go out for that $200 dinner because you want to send your money elsewhere, great. You know what your priorities are, and the next step is advocating for yourself and saying no. And so that, like, deeper understanding with yourself, I think, is what I'm going to take away, and the most important thing that I'm going to apply to my spending and saving habits.
So if you want lots of cattle, you got to wear a small hat.
Yes, I guess so. I mean, you can get that hat from Old Navy, like that pink shirt you
There we
were
go.
wearing in the last episode.
That brings us to the end of another week.
What are we going to talk about next week?
Next week, we are talking about, do you need a financial advisor?
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.